So let's go and create our first EFS network file system. So let's type EFS, and we are in the EFS console. So let's create a file system. And as we can see, we have a very simple dialog. And you can click on create, and this will just go ahead and create it. But we want to go through the options. So we'll click on customize to look at all the options for our Elastic file system. So the name is optional, so we'll leave it empty. We can enable automated backups to just have a backup of our network file system, which is nice. And we have a lifecycle management tab. So here we can use something called the EFS infrequent access storage class. And the idea is to say, okay, if a file has not been accessed in 30 days, it looks like it's a file that is infrequently accessed. Therefore, move it to the EFS IA storage class in order to save some costs. And that makes sense. So you can say 7 days, 14 days, 30, 60, or 90. Okay. So we'll just leave it as a default of 30 days. Then we get different performance modes. So we have general purpose or max IO. And general purpose, as the name indicates, is ideal for latency sensitive use cases, such as web serving environments and content management systems. So if you have a WordPress, for example, this would be a great use case. And max IO scales to higher level of aggregate throughput and operations per second with a bit more latency. This is better for a big data or file processing type of use case. So we'll just leave at general purpose for now. The throughput mode can be either bursting, and that means that the throughput will scale with the file system size, allowing you for short burst, or if you want deterministic throughput for your EFS file system, maybe because you have a small EFS file system, but you need high throughput, then you can provision how many megabytes you want up to 1024 MIB, so megabytes per second. We'll just leave it as bursting as well. We can enable encryption at rest for our EFS file system and scroll down. Now let's click on next. Very important now are the network access settings. So we are operating in our VPC and we can mount it across multiple different availability zones. So EFS is a network file system and we can have it across different AZ, as I'll demonstrate you in a second. And so for each AZ, you should define a security group. And so right now I'm going to go ahead and create the security group we need. So let's go into the EC2 console and I will go into the security groups tab. So on the left-hand side, create a security group and I'll call this one my EFS demo. And for now, no inbound rules. And I will go ahead and create the security group. Okay, so security group for EFS. And create it. So now we'll use my EFS demo into this dialog. So I will remove all these security groups and I will choose my EFS demo, which I probably have to refresh this page. So let me do this right now. I'll refresh this page and very quickly scroll down, click on next, and here we go. So I will choose now my EFS demo right here to be the security group for each different attachment point. So okay, and the last one, my EFS demo. Good. So we'll see what that security group impacts in a second. Then I will click on next. File system policy is optional and this is out of scope, so I will just go ahead and skip this. And finally, we can review everything. So we can review and create. So everything looks good here. We have encryption, we are in our VPC, we have IA enabled, we have 3 availability zones that are going to work with our EFS file system, and they all have the same security group that we just created. And I will just go ahead and click on create. So now my file system is creating. And while that happens, I can go ahead into my EC2 and I want to create 2 EC2 instances that are going to be accessing that EFS file system. So as we can see, let's go ahead. The file system is created. It is created. And so if we look at the size, we can see that we are using 6 kilobytes and we'll only pay in EFS for what we're using. So we're using 6 kilobytes. So this is what we're going to pay for. And we can also get some information around the size in EFS infrequent access. So how many files have been moved into that much lower price tier in EFS. Okay, so everything looks good right here. Now let's go ahead and create our EC2 instances. So I'll click on launch instance. I will choose Amazon Linux 2, AMI, T2 Micro to remain within the free tier. and then I will choose one instance, and I will launch this one in EU West 2B, for example, as my first AZ. If you scroll down, you can see that there's file system, and you could add your EFS file system here, but we'll not do that. I want to show you how it's mounted, so don't click here. We'll click on add storage. We can leave the storage as is, add tags. This is fine. I'll go ahead and create a new security group for my instance, and I'll call it EC2 to EFS, because this is my EC2 instance that's going to access my EFS network file system. We're going to allow SSH, review and launch, and yes, I have this key pair, launch my instance. So now this instance is launching, and I'm going to launch a similar one, but in a different availability zone. So I right click, launch more like this, and then in my instance details, I will edit the instance details, and I will set it in EU West 2A to be a different availability zone. Review and launch, and launch this instance. So here we go. Now we have two instances that have been launched in two different availability zones, so this one and that one, and we want them to be able to access our EFS network file system. So I'm going to SSH into each of these instances. So this first one is right here. I'm going to launch my SSH command. So ec2tutorial.pem and then ec2 user at my IP. I'm into my first host, and I'm going to take this IP of my second EC2 instance and launch a similar command. So here we go, ec2 user at the IP. Okay, so I've done SSH into both instances, and they're both in two different availability zones. Next, I need to install EFS on these instances. So the easiest way is to go back to the EFS console, and on the top right, there's attach. And this gives you some information around how you can attach EFS into your instances. So as we can see, we can mount via DNS or mount via IP. We'll use mount via DNS, and we'll use the EFS mount helper. So to use this thing, we have to go into the user guide in the documentation and install a small package onto our EC2 instances called the Amazon EFS utils package. So we click on installing the Amazon EFS utils package on Amazon Linux too. And as we can see, we can scroll down and do this sudo yum install command. So let's go ahead and do this yum install command onto both my instances. And this is going to install the necessary packages to use this EFS mount helper. Okay, so this was very quick. Now back into EFS. We need to create the EFS directory. So to do so, very simple. We're going to do make dir EFS and make dir EFS. So now if we look into both of our instances, they both have an EFS folder. Next, I'm going to run this command right here to mount the EFS drive using TLS, so there will be in-flight encryption, and I will mount it into this EFS directory. So let me copy this command right here and paste it, press enter, and as you can see, there is a timeout. That's because we need to modify the security group settings. So let's stop this command, and I'm going to go into my EC2 console, and we need to modify one security group. So if we remember, we have attached a security group into our EFS network file system, which was this one, my EFS demo. And currently my EFS demo, in terms of inbound rules, does not allow anything. What needs to happen is that my EFS demo needs to allow inbound from EC2 to EFS. So very simply, let's edit the inbound rule, add a rule, and we'll look for NFS. And the source of it is going to be EC2 to EFS security group. And so we allow EC2 instances into EFS. We'll save this rule. And now that this rule has been done, we should be able to go back into EFS, try this command again, and then it should succeed. And it has succeeded. I can apply the very same command in here on the right-hand side, and it has succeeded as well. Okay, good. So what did happen? Well, let's go into the EFS directory. So I just changed directory into the EFS directory. And currently, we can see there are no files. But what if I create a hello world.txt file in here? Well, I don't have enough permission, so I will do sudo touch hello world.txt. That should do it. Now, if I look into the files, I have a hello world.txt file here. And if I look now on the right-hand side and list the files into EFS, we can see the same hello world file has been created. So if I do sudo echo, if I do sudo nano hello world.txt to just edit and say hello world from the first instance and save this file. So if we look into the content of this file, hello world.txt, it says hello world from the first instance. And if we look into the content of the very same file onto the right-hand side instance, it also hello world from the first instance. So this file system mounted on the left-hand side and the right-hand side is the same. It is a shared network file system, and that is the whole power of EFS. And that's it, very simple. So when you're done with this, you can go ahead and delete the EFS file system, obviously, and you could go ahead and terminate these EC2 instances if you needed to. So you click on these two instances, action, and then terminate, and you'll be good to go. So that's it for me. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.